A slave boy sees the master's wife crying in the kitchen, a forbidden moment that changes everything. In seconds, their eyes meet and the impossible happens. She speaks to him, revealing a secret no one knew, so dangerous it could destroy them both. As tears stream down her face, she whispers words that shatter his world and forge an alliance neither of them sought, but both desperately need. What happens in that kitchen will test the limits of courage in a world built on fear. Samuel had mastered the art of invisibility by age 12. Moving through the Thornfield plantation mansion like a shadow, he'd learned to breathe silently, step lightly, and keep his eyes down. Master William demanded perfection from his house slaves. A misplaced teacup or a creaking floorboard could mean the whip. But Samuel possessed something rare, keen observation skills that helped him anticipate needs before they were spoken. He memorized the master's habits, the mistress's moods, and the rhythm of the household. This talent had kept him alive while others were sold off for minor infractions. But what Samuel didn't know was that his greatest skill would soon become his greatest liability. The walls of Thornfield Mansion held secrets darker than the spaces between floorboards, secrets not meant for the ears of property, and Samuel's ability to notice everything made him dangerous in ways he couldn't yet understand. "Remember, boy," old Martha had warned him once, "seeing too much in this house is just as deadly as seeing nothing at all." On a sweltering Tuesday afternoon, Samuel carried fresh linens to the main bedroom when a sound stopped him cold, soft, muffled sobbing coming from the kitchen. Slaves didn't cry where they could be heard. This was something else. Hesitating only briefly, he changed course, drawn by curiosity he couldn't afford. Peering around the doorframe, he saw Mistress Eleanor, not the composed, distant woman who barely acknowledged the slaves, but a broken figure, shoulders heaving, clutching papers to her chest. Her face was red and swollen, tears streaming unchecked. In that single unguarded moment, Samuel's carefully constructed invisibility failed completely. He shifted his weight, and the ancient floorboard beneath him groaned. Her head snapped up, eyes locking with his in a moment that stretched between them like eternity. The look in her eyes when she noticed him wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. Recognition. As if she'd been waiting for someone, anyone, to witness her pain. And in that moment, Samuel realized with bone-deep certainty that whatever came next would change everything. Eleanor Thornfield wiped her tears with trembling fingers, her gaze never leaving Samuel's face. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence between them, marking seconds that felt stretched into eternity. Sunlight filtered through the gauzy curtains, casting dappled patterns across the polished wood floor, illuminating dust motes that danced between them like silent witnesses to this forbidden exchange. "Come in, boy," she finally whispered, her voice hoarse from crying. "Close the door." Samuel hesitated, his hand gripping the doorframe so tightly his knuckles whitened. Alone with the master's wife was dangerous territory, a boundary no slave crossed without severe consequences. Slaves had been hanged for less than a private conversation with the mistress. But something in her eyes, a desperate vulnerability he'd never witnessed in any white person, made him step forward and push the heavy oak door closed behind him. The latch clicked with finality, sealing their fates together. "Your name?" she asked, straightening her posture though her hands still shook, smudging tear stains across the papers she clutched. "Samuel, ma'am." His voice emerged steadier than he felt. "You're William's houseboy." Not a question, but an acknowledgement. Her eyes studied him with new intensity, as if truly seeing him for the first time after years of looking past him. "Yes, ma'am." Samuel kept his gaze respectfully lowered, though his mind raced with confusion. In 6 years of service, Mistress Eleanor had never addressed him directly, had barely acknowledged his existence beyond issuing orders to the head house slave. Eleanor glanced down at the papers crumpled in her fist, then back at Samuel. The morning light caught the gold flecks in her hazel eyes, revealing a redness that spoke of many sleepless nights before this one. "Can you read, Samuel?" The question hung in the air like a noose. Teaching slaves to read was forbidden by law throughout the South, punishable by whipping for the slave and hefty fines for the teacher. Samuel's eyes darted to the window, calculating escape routes, measuring the distance to the back door. His heart hammered against his ribs so loudly he was certain she could hear it. "I won't tell anyone," she added, noting his fear with a softening expression. "But I need to know. It's important." Samuel swallowed hard, his throat dry as cotton. Old Martha had taught him letters in secret, late at night by candlelight in the slave quarters, using scraps of newspaper and charcoal to form words. "Some, ma'am," he admitted softly, the confession barely audible above the gentle bubbling of the pot on the stove. Eleanor nodded, as if confirming something to herself. She smoothed the wrinkled papers on the table with trembling fingers adorned with gold rings that caught the light. "My husband is not who he claims to be." Samuel remained perfectly still, understanding that each word she spoke could end both their lives. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker and harder to breathe. Outside, a mockingbird sang cheerfully, oblivious to the dangerous currents shifting within the mansion's walls. "These papers prove he's been selling plantation assets and moving money offshore. Cotton shipments recorded as half their actual size. Slaves listed as dead who were secretly sold to traders bound for New Orleans." Her voice dropped even lower. "He plans to abandon everything, including me, once he's accumulated enough wealth. The plantation is drowning in debt that no one knows about." Her voice broke, a hairline crack in fine porcelain. "And he's arranged to sell most of the house slaves next month, all of you, even the children." Samuel felt the floor tilt beneath him, the familiar kitchen suddenly alien and threatening. Being sold south was every slave's nightmare. Harder work, crueler masters, early death in the sugarcane fields or swampy rice plantations. His family, his friends, everyone he knew would be scattered like leaves in a November wind, never to see each other again. His mother, already weakened from years of field work, wouldn't survive the journey. And his little sister, just 8 years old, he couldn't bear to imagine her fate. "Why tell me this, ma'am?" he managed to ask, his voice a controlled whisper despite the storm raging inside him. "Why not speak to Master's brother, or the sheriff?" Eleanor's eyes hardened, transforming from fragile glass to tempered steel in an instant. "William's brother is his business partner. The sheriff is in his pocket. The banker drinks with him every Sunday." Her fingers traced the edge of the damning papers. "I have no allies in this town, Samuel. No family within 500 miles. No money of my own." She leaned forward, the scent of lavender water surrounding her like a cloud. "But I need someone who can move through this house unnoticed. Someone who sees everything but is seen by no one. You've served the tea during my husband's business meetings for years. You've been invisible in plain sight." Samuel felt a chill despite the kitchen's warmth. Being noticed for his invisibility was its own kind of danger. "Help me stop him, Samuel, and I'll ensure you and your mother are never sold." She hesitated, then added, "And I'll see your sister moved from the fields to the house, where the work is easier." The kitchen suddenly felt airless, the walls pressing in. Samuel knew he should refuse. Entanglement in white folks' business was certain death, but the thought of his mother being sold away, of his sister's small hands bleeding from cotton bowls, made his decision for him. In that moment, fear of what might happen if he agreed seemed less terrible than the certainty of what would happen if he refused. "What would you have me do, ma'am?" The words fell from his lips like stones, heavy with consequence. Eleanor's lips curved into the ghost of a smile, relief softening the tight lines around her mouth. "Listen. Watch. And most importantly, find his ledger, the real one. He keeps it hidden somewhere in this house, separate from the books he shows to the bank." She pressed one of the papers into his hand, her fingers cool against his palm. This is his handwriting. The ledger will look similar, bound in green, leather with a brass lock. As Samuel tucked the paper into his shirt against his skin where it burned like a coal, the distant sound of horses and carriage wheels crunching on gravel announced Master William's early return from town. Eleanor quickly composed herself, splashing water from the basin onto her face and pinching her cheeks for color. Samuel slipped toward the servants' entrance, his movements fluid and practiced once more. "Samuel," she called softly as he reached the door, her voice barely carrying across the room. "If my husband discovers what we're doing, he'll kill us both. He's already killed to protect his secrets." The words froze him mid-step. He turned back, a question in his eyes. "The previous overseer," Eleanor whispered, answering his unspoken query. "The one who supposedly died of fever last spring. He found something in William's study. The next day, he was dead." Samuel nodded once, committing this new information to memory, and vanished into the shadows of the hallway. The house that had always been his prison now felt like a powder keg, and he had just been handed a match. As he resumed his duties, carrying linens up the back stairs as if nothing had changed, he felt the weight of the paper against his chest. A contract written in whispers, sealed with tears, and potentially signed in blood. Behind him, the kitchen door closed on Mistress Eleanor's secrets, but Samuel knew some doors, once opened, could never truly be shut again. That night, sleep eluded Samuel. He lay on his thin straw mattress in the cramped quarters he shared with 3 other house slaves, listening to their steady breathing while his mind raced. The paper Mistress Eleanor had given him was hidden beneath a loose floorboard under his bed, the safest place he could think of, though nowhere was truly safe. The master's handwriting burned in his memory, sharp, slanting letters that seemed to stab the page, just like the man himself. Dawn came too quickly. Samuel rose before the others, splashing cold water on his face from the communal basin. His mother, Esther, watched him from her pallet in the corner, her eyes knowing. "You're troubled, boy," she whispered as he helped her to her feet. At 45, she moved like a woman twice her age, her body broken by decades in the cotton fields before Master William had moved her to laundry duty last year. "Just tired, Mama," Samuel lied, avoiding her gaze. Telling her the truth would only burden her with dangerous knowledge. She didn't believe him. "Remember what I taught you. Keep your head down, your ears open, and your thoughts hidden," he finished for her. It was her constant refrain, the survival wisdom she'd instilled in him since childhood. She nodded, patting his cheek with a work-roughened hand. "And trust no one. Not even those who offer help." Samuel's stomach clenched. Had she somehow guessed about his conversation with Mistress Eleanor? But there was no time to dwell on it. The day's work awaited, and being late would draw attention he couldn't afford. The mansion hummed with activity as Samuel moved through his morning tasks. He polished silver until it gleamed, dusted the library shelves, and prepared Master William's study before the man came downstairs. Each movement was performed with mechanical precision while his mind worked on a different problem entirely: how to search for the hidden ledger without being caught. The opportunity came sooner than expected. As Samuel served breakfast in the formal dining room, Master William announced his plans for the day. "I'll be riding to the Beaumont plantation to discuss the cotton shipment," he informed his wife, not looking up from his eggs. "Don't expect me until evening." Eleanor's face remained impassive, though Samuel noticed her knuckles whitening around her teacup. "Of course, dear. Will you be dining there?" "Most likely. Don't hold supper." William finally glanced at her, his gaze sharp. "And I trust you'll find ways to occupy yourself productively in my absence?" The question carried an undercurrent that Samuel couldn't quite decipher, but Eleanor merely nodded. "I thought I might visit the Hendersons this afternoon." "Excellent." William returned to his newspaper, the matter settled. Samuel kept his expression blank as he refilled water glasses, though his heart raced. With the master gone and the mistress supposedly visiting neighbors, the house would be less closely watched. It might be his only chance to search the study. But as he cleared the breakfast dishes, Samuel realized he had overlooked a critical detail. Master William never left his study unlocked. The heavy oak door was always secured when he was away, the key carried on his person. Breaking in would be impossible without leaving evidence. As if reading his thoughts, Eleanor brushed past him in the hallway an hour later, pressing something cold and metal into his palm as she whispered, "The spare key. Return it before sundown." Then she was gone, her skirts swishing around the corner. Samuel closed his fingers around the key, a mixture of relief and dread washing over him. With the means to enter the study now in his possession, there was no turning back. By mid-morning, the master had departed on horseback, and Eleanor's carriage had rolled down the long drive toward town. Samuel completed his assigned tasks with extra efficiency, ensuring no one would come looking for him. Then, with heart pounding, he slipped down the main corridor toward the study. The hallway stretched empty before him, sunlight streaming through tall windows onto the polished floor. Samuel paused, listening. From the kitchen came the distant clatter of pots and the murmur of voices, the cook and her helpers preparing the midday meal. Upstairs, a maid was singing softly as she changed linens. No one was watching. With trembling fingers, Samuel inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a soft click that seemed thunderous in the quiet hallway. He slipped inside and closed the door behind him. Master William's study was a shrine to wealth and power. Dark mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that Samuel suspected were more for show than reading. A massive desk dominated the center of the room, its surface organized with military precision. Inkwell, quills, blotter, and correspondence stacked in neat piles. Behind the desk hung a portrait of William's father, the previous master, his stern gaze seeming to follow Samuel accusingly. "Where would you hide your secrets?" Samuel whispered to himself, scanning the room methodically. The obvious places would be too obvious: desk drawers, cabinets, the safe behind the painting, whose combination Samuel had memorized years ago by watching the master open it. No, a man like William Thornfield, who planned his betrayals with such calculation, would choose somewhere both accessible and unexpected. Samuel began his search, moving silently around the room. He checked behind books, under furniture, inside the hollow bases of candlesticks. Nothing. Precious minutes ticked by on the ornate clock on the mantelpiece, each one increasing the danger of discovery. Then Samuel remembered something. Last winter he had been dusting in here when Master William snapped at him to leave immediately. At the time, Samuel had assumed the man simply wanted privacy, but now he recalled that William had been standing near the fireplace, seemingly adjusting something on the mantelpiece. Samuel approached the large marble fireplace. The mantel appeared solid, but when he ran his fingers along its underside, he felt a slight irregularity. A small lever, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. Heart racing, he pulled it gently. A soft click, and a panel in the wall beside the fireplace swung inward by an inch. Samuel pushed it open to reveal a small compartment. Inside lay a green leather-bound book with a brass lock, exactly as Eleanor had described. His hands shook as he removed it. The lock was engaged, but that hardly mattered. Samuel couldn't read well enough to fully understand the contents anyway. His job was only to find it, to confirm its existence and location for Mistress Eleanor. As he was about to replace the ledger and close the hidden panel, the sound of approaching footsteps froze him in place. Someone was coming down the hallway, heavy, deliberate steps that could only belong to a man. Master William, returned unexpectedly? Or perhaps the overseer, Mr. Haynes, coming to report something to the absent master. Samuel's mind raced. If he was discovered in the study, no explanation would save him. The key in his pocket and the ledger in his hands were evidence enough to have him whipped to death. Or worse. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A shadow passed beneath it, blocking the light from the hallway. Samuel held his breath, the ledger clutched to his chest as the door handle began to turn. The door handle turned halfway, then stopped. Samuel stood frozen, the ledger pressed against his chest, barely daring to breathe. Outside, a man's voice called out, "Mr. Haynes, Master William needs you at the South Field." Something about the new cotton press. The shadow beneath the door shifted. "I was just checking if the master left any instructions in his study," came the overseer's gruff reply. "He specifically asked for you to come immediately, sir." A moment of hesitation, then the shadow disappeared. "Very well." Samuel listened as Haynes's footsteps retreated down the hallway. Only when they faded completely did he allow himself to exhale, his legs suddenly weak with relief. He recognized the second voice as belonging to Isaiah, one of the field hands. Had the man deliberately interrupted Haynes, or was it mere coincidence? Either way, Samuel owed him his life. With trembling hands, Samuel carefully replaced the ledger in its hiding place, ensuring the secret panel clicked shut. He had accomplished what Eleanor asked. He'd found the ledger and could now tell her where it was hidden. But curiosity gnawed at him. What secrets did those pages contain that were worth killing for? Samuel knew he should leave immediately, but instead he pulled the paper Eleanor had given him from his shirt. The handwriting matched the label on the ledger perfectly. As he was about to return the paper to his hiding place, something caught his eye. A name written in the corner of the document. J. Blackwood. The name meant nothing to him, but Samuel committed it to memory before tucking the paper away. Every piece of information might matter. After wiping away any trace of his presence, Samuel slipped out of the study, locking the door behind him. The key felt like a burning coal in his pocket as he hurried back to his regular duties, forcing himself to move at a normal pace despite the urge to run. As he rounded the corner toward the kitchen, Samuel nearly collided with Abigail, the head house slave. Her sharp eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Where you been, boy?" she demanded, looking him up and down. "Cook's been asking for you these past 15 minutes. Samuel lowered his gaze respectfully. "Sorry, Abigail. Master William left his pocket watch in the library. I was returning it to his study." The lie came smoothly, though his heart raced. Abigail studied him for a moment longer. At 53, she had served the Thornfield family since before Samuel was born. Nothing in the house escaped her notice, and her loyalty to the master was unwavering, a survival strategy that had kept her alive and relatively comfortable while countless others had been sold away. She finally said, unconvinced. "Well, get on to the kitchen now. And Samuel—" She caught his arm as he tried to pass. "Whatever game you're playing, boy, it ain't worth your hide. I've seen slaves come and go for 30 years. The clever ones who think they can outsmart the master always suffer the most." Samuel nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "Yes, Abigail." She released him with a small push. "Go on, then." For the rest of the day, Samuel worked mechanically, his mind elsewhere. He chopped vegetables for Cook, polished silver until it gleamed, and swept the dining room floor, all while feeling Abigail's watchful gaze following him. The weight of the key in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing hour. When Mistress Eleanor returned from her supposed visit to the Hendersons late that afternoon, he managed to cross her path while carrying linens to the upstairs bedrooms. "It's in a hidden compartment beside the fireplace," he whispered as he passed her in the hallway. "Behind a panel. There's a lever under the mantel." Eleanor's face betrayed nothing, but she gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Leave the key on my dressing table when you turn down the bed," she murmured, then continued on her way. As Samuel placed fresh linens in the master bedroom later that afternoon, he carefully deposited the key on Eleanor's ornate silver dressing table, hiding it partially beneath a lace handkerchief. As he did so, he noticed a small leather-bound journal tucked beneath her pillow. The corner of a letter peeked out from its pages, addressed in a masculine hand that wasn't Master William's. Samuel quickly averted his eyes. The mistress' secrets beyond those she chose to share with him were not his concern. He had enough dangers to navigate without adding more. That evening, Master William returned in a foul mood, complaining loudly about incompetent neighbors and declining cotton prices. Samuel served dinner silently, noting the tension between husband and wife. Eleanor was unusually quiet, her eyes downcast, while William drank more wine than usual. The dining room crackled with unspoken hostility, making Samuel increasingly uneasy as he moved between kitchen and dining room. "Did you enjoy your visit with the Hendersons?" William asked suddenly, his voice deceptively casual as Samuel poured more wine into his crystal glass. "Yes, quite pleasant," Eleanor replied smoothly. "Margaret's garden is coming along beautifully." William's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting, since I happened to pass Robert Henderson on the road to Beaumont. He mentioned that Margaret has been bedridden with fever these past 3 days. No visitors allowed." The dining room fell silent. Samuel, who had been clearing side dishes, kept his face carefully blank as he retreated to the kitchen, though his heart hammered in his chest. He lingered near the door, listening. "I must have misunderstood which neighbor Margaret was," Eleanor said after a pause. "It was the Wilsons I visited." "The Wilsons." William's tone was flat with disbelief. "And how is dear Charlotte Wilson faring after her move to Boston last month?" Samuel didn't hear Eleanor's response as Cook shooed him away from the door, but the damage was done. Master William knew his wife, had lied about her whereabouts. The question was whether he would connect it to anything else. "Boy, take this tray up to the master's study," Cook ordered, thrusting a silver service loaded with brandy and a single glass into Samuel's hands. "And be quick about it. Master's in no mood for dawdling tonight." Samuel carried the tray upstairs, his steps measured and quiet. The study door was ajar, and he could hear Master William speaking to someone inside. Pausing outside, Samuel listened. "Need to accelerate our timeline," William was saying. "My wife is growing suspicious, and that buyer from Georgia is eager to close the deal." "The papers won't be ready until next week at the earliest," replied a second voice, Mr. Haynes, the overseer. "And moving that many slaves at once will draw attention." "I don't care about attention," William snapped. "By the time anyone realizes what's happened, I'll be halfway to Europe with enough money to live like a king. The plantation's mortgaged to the hilt anyway. Let the bank have the worthless land." Samuel's blood ran cold. So it was true. Everything Eleanor had told him. William Thornfield planned to sell them all and flee with the profits, abandoning even his wife in the process. "And what about Mrs. Thornfield?" Haynes asked, echoing Samuel's thoughts. There was a pause, then William's voice, chillingly calm. "My wife's health has been deteriorating for some time. Tragic, really. I doubt she'll survive the summer." Samuel nearly dropped the tray. The master was planning to murder his wife, and once Eleanor was gone, there would be no one to prevent the sale of the slaves. Or worse. Taking a deep breath to compose himself, Samuel knocked softly on the door. "Enter," William called. Samuel stepped into the study, his face a careful mask as he set the tray on a side table. "Your brandy, master." William barely glanced at him. "That will be all." Samuel bowed slightly and backed out of the room, feeling William's eyes following him. Had the master noticed his momentary hesitation? Did he suspect Samuel had overheard? The study door closed behind him with an ominous click. That night, as Samuel lay awake in the slave quarters, a soft tap came at the window. He rose silently, careful not to wake the others, and peered out to see Isaiah, the field hand whose timely interruption had saved him earlier. Samuel slipped outside, the cool night air raising goosebumps on his arms. "Isaiah?" The older man glanced around nervously. "We need to talk, boy. Not here." They moved to the shadow of a large oak tree, far enough from the cabins that their whispers wouldn't carry. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the plantation grounds. In the distance, The main house stood dark and silent, like a slumbering beast. Isaiah's face was grave in the moonlight, new lines of worry etched around his eyes. "You're playing with fire, Samuel," he said without preamble, "getting involved in white folks' business." Samuel stiffened. "I don't know what you mean." Isaiah snorted. "Don't lie to me, boy. I saw you coming out of the master's study today, and I've seen how the mistress has been watching you lately." He leaned closer. "Whatever she's asked you to do, it ain't worth your life." "You don't understand," Samuel whispered, glancing nervously toward the overseer's cabin. "Master William plans to sell us all next month. My mother wouldn't survive being sent south." Isaiah's expression softened slightly. "I know about the sale. That's what I came to tell you. It's happening sooner than you think. I overheard Haynes and the master talking by the cotton press. The buyers are coming next week, not next month." Samuel felt the blood drain from his face. "Next week? That's impossible. We don't have enough time." "Time for what?" Isaiah's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you and the mistress planning?" Samuel hesitated, then decided to trust the man who had already saved him once. "She found papers proving the master has been stealing from the plantation, hiding money. There's a ledger with evidence that could stop him." Isaiah was already shaking his head before Samuel finished speaking. "And you believe she'll help us if you help her? Boy, when white folks fight each other, we're just the weapons they use. When it's over, they throw us away all the same." "She promised." "Her promises mean nothing," Isaiah cut him off. "The mistress ain't looking to save us. She's looking to save herself. Once she gets what she wants, you'll be the first one she sacrifices." Samuel wanted to argue, but doubt had already taken root. Hadn't his mother warned him to trust no one, not even those offering help? Still, what choice did he have? "What should I do then?" he asked, desperation creeping into his voice. Isaiah glanced toward the big house, its windows dark except for the master's study, where a single lamp still burned. "There's talk among the field hands, plans being made. Some are thinking of running." Running? Samuel had heard whispers of escape attempts before, but few ever succeeded. The swamps were treacherous, the slave catchers brutal, and the punishment for failed escape was often fatal. Just last year, a young man named Tobias had tried to flee. They'd brought him back 3 days later, more dead than alive. Master William had made everyone watch the whipping that followed. Tobias hadn't survived the night. "There's a man coming," Isaiah said, his voice dropping even lower. "A conductor on the railroad, 2 nights from now." The Underground Railroad. Samuel had heard rumors of the secret network helping slaves escape north to freedom, but had always considered it more legend than reality. The idea that it might actually exist, that freedom might be within reach, made his heart race. "How do you know this?" Samuel asked, suspicion mingling with hope. Isaiah pulled up his sleeve to reveal a small scar in the shape of a star on his forearm. "I've been helping others get away for 3 years now. Small groups, 1 or 2 at a time. But this is different. With the mass sale coming, we're planning something bigger." Samuel stared at the scar, then at Isaiah's face, seeing the man in an entirely new light. All this time, the quiet, obedient field hand had been risking his life to help others escape. How many other secrets were hidden behind downcast eyes and submissive postures on the plantation? "My mother can barely walk," Samuel said, thinking practically, "and my sister is too young." "The old and young slow everyone down," Isaiah acknowledged grimly. "Hard choices have to be made." Samuel felt sick at the implication. Leave his family behind to save himself? Never. "There must be another way," he insisted. "If we could prove what Master William is doing—" "To who?" Isaiah interrupted. "The sheriff, the magistrate. They're all cut from the same cloth, boy. They protect their own." "What about that name? J. Blackwood?" Samuel asked suddenly. "I saw it on one of the master's papers. Could that person help?" Isaiah's expression changed, a flicker of recognition crossing his features before he schooled them back to neutrality. "Where did you hear that name?" "It was written on a document the mistress showed me." "Do you know who it is?" Isaiah hesitated, then sighed. "Jacob Blackwood. He was Master William's business partner years ago, before your time. They had a falling out, something about money gone missing. Blackwood accused the master of stealing from their company. Nobody believed him because Master William was so respected then. Blackwood lost everything and left the county in disgrace. So he'd have reason to want revenge against Master William," Samuel said thoughtfully. "If he knew what was happening now—" "That's assuming he's still alive," Isaiah pointed out, "and that he'd care about the fate of slaves on his enemy's plantation." Samuel nodded, acknowledging the point. Still, it was a thread worth pulling. "I need to see what's in that ledger," he said finally. "If it's as damning as the mistress believes, maybe there's another way to stop the sale." Isaiah studied him for a long moment, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "You've got one day to find out. After that, you need to decide. Run with us, or take your chances here." He gripped Samuel's shoulder. "But whatever you do, watch the mistress. White women's tears are more dangerous than white men's whips." "What does that mean?" Samuel asked. "It means when things go wrong, and they always do, she'll save herself first, and nothing makes a white woman look more innocent than pointing the finger at a black man." Isaiah's voice was bitter with the knowledge of generations. "You think you're her ally? You're just her shield." With that warning, Isaiah melted back into the darkness, leaving Samuel alone with impossible choices and the weight of his family's fate on his shoulders. The night air suddenly felt colder, the shadows deeper and more threatening. As he crept back toward the slave quarters, Samuel noticed a light still burning in the upstairs window of the mansion, Mistress Eleanor's bedroom. Was she plotting their salvation, as she claimed? Or was Isaiah right about her motives? The letter he'd glimpsed beneath her pillow nagged at him. What other secrets was Eleanor Thornfield keeping? A sudden movement near the stables caught Samuel's attention. A figure slipped from the shadows, Mr. Haynes, the overseer, emerging from the direction of the slave quarters. What business did he have there at this hour? As Haynes passed beneath a tree, moonlight illuminated his face, revealing a satisfied smirk that made Samuel's skin crawl. Something was wrong. Samuel hurried his pace, keeping to the shadows until he reached the cabin he shared with his family and the other house slaves. Inside, he found his mother sitting up on her pallet, her face lined with worry. "Samuel," she whispered as he entered, "where have you been? Haynes was here, asking questions about you." Samuel's blood turned to ice. "What kind of questions?" "About whether you can read, about whether you've been meeting with Mistress Eleanor." Esther's voice trembled. "Someone's been talking, son. Someone told him you're up to something." Samuel thought immediately of Abigail, the head house slave whose suspicious gaze had followed him all day. Had she reported him to curry favor with the overseer, or was there another informant among them? "What did you tell him?" Samuel asked. "That my boy knows his place and does as he's told," Esther replied firmly. "That the mistress barely knows you exist." Samuel sat beside her on the thin pallet, taking her weathered hands in his. "Mama, things are happening. Bad things. Master William plans to sell us all next week, not next month like we thought." Esther closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the blow. When she opened them again, there was a steely determination there that Samuel recognized. The same look she'd had when they'd sold his father to a plantation in Mississippi 7 years ago. "Then we need to be ready," she said simply. "Isaiah says there's a way out. People running in 2 nights' time." Esther nodded slowly. "I've heard the whispers. But Samuel, my legs won't carry me far, and your sister—" "I won't leave you," Samuel interrupted fiercely. "Either we all go, or none of us do." His mother cupped his face with one calloused hand. "My brave, foolish boy. Sometimes the greatest love is knowing when to let go. There might be another way, Samuel said, unwilling to accept her implication. Tomorrow, I'm going to find out exactly what's in that ledger. If it contains what I think it does, we might have leverage. Leverage? Esther looked alarmed. Samuel, that's even more dangerous than running. Blackmailing white folks never ends well for people like us. Not blackmail, Samuel clarified. Justice. If the master has been stealing, defrauding people, there must be someone with the power to stop him, someone who would want to stop him. Esther didn't look convinced, but she nodded. One day, then. But promise me, if your plan doesn't work, you'll go with Isaiah. Your sister and I will manage somehow. Mama. Promise me, she insisted. At least one of us should taste freedom. Samuel swallowed hard, unable to imagine leaving them behind but seeing the unyielding resolve in his mother's eyes. I promise to try everything else first. Esther seemed to accept this compromise. Get some sleep now. Tomorrow will test us all. As Samuel finally lay down on his pallet, sleep remained elusive. Through the small window, he could still see the light burning in Eleanor's room. Tomorrow, he decided he would find out exactly what was in that green leather book, even if he had to break the lock himself. And he would discover what other secrets the mistress was hiding, including the identity of her mysterious correspondent. Knowledge was his only weapon now, and time was running out. One way or another, by this time tomorrow, the course of all their lives would be set. In the darkness of the cabin, Samuel's sister stirred in her sleep, murmuring something about butterflies. He reached across to smooth her hair, his resolve strengthening. For her sake, for all their sakes, he would find a way through this labyrinth of secrets and lies. Freedom, or at least survival, depended on it. Dawn broke with a crimson streak across the eastern sky, a bloody harbinger that Samuel couldn't help but interpret as an omen. He rose before the others, his body stiff from restless sleep, and slipped outside to splash cold water on his face from the rain barrel. The plantation was stirring to life around him, smoke rising from the kitchen chimney, field hands trudging toward the cotton fields, birds calling in the oak trees that lined the drive. Today would determine everything. Samuel completed his morning duties with mechanical precision, his mind racing with plans and contingencies. As he served breakfast, he noted that both Master William and Mistress Eleanor seemed unusually tense, barely speaking to each other. William's eyes were bloodshot from too much brandy the night before, while Eleanor's hands trembled slightly as she lifted her teacup. "I'll be in town all day," William announced abruptly, folding his newspaper, "meeting with the banker and some business associates." Eleanor nodded without looking up. "Will you be home for dinner?" "Don't count on it." William pushed back from the table and stood. "I have a great deal to arrange." The words hung ominously in the air. Samuel, standing by the sideboard, kept his face carefully blank, though his heart hammered in his chest. The arrangements could only be the impending slave sale. After William departed, the house fell into its usual rhythm. Samuel watched Eleanor closely as he went about his tasks, noting how she seemed distracted, glancing frequently at the grandfather clock in the hall. Was she waiting for something? Or someone? His opportunity came mid-morning when Eleanor summoned him to her sitting room. She was standing by the window, watching the drive, when he entered. "Samuel," she said without turning, "I need you to deliver a letter to town." This was unexpected. House slaves rarely left the plantation grounds, and certainly not on errands to town. "Yes, ma'am," he replied cautiously. She finally faced him, extending a sealed envelope. "Take this to the post office. Give it directly to Mr. Patterson, the postmaster. No one else." Her eyes held his with unusual intensity. "This is of the utmost importance. Can I trust you?" Samuel took the envelope, noting there was no address written on it. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Take the small cart and the old bay mare. If anyone asks, you're fetching supplies for cook." She handed him a second, smaller envelope. "This is your pass. signed by me, explaining your presence in town. Keep it with you at all times." Samuel tucked both envelopes into his shirt. "When should I leave?" "Immediately," Eleanor replied, "and Samuel—" Her voice softened slightly. "Be careful. There are many dangers for a young man like you in town." He nodded, understanding her meaning. A slave alone in town would be a target for slave catchers, suspicious townspeople, and any number of other threats. The pass would offer some protection, but not much if someone decided to challenge it. "I'll be back before sundown, ma'am," he promised. As he turned to leave, Eleanor added, "I found a way to access the ledger. By tonight we'll have what we need to stop William." Samuel paused, then nodded again without turning around. He didn't trust himself to respond without revealing his growing doubts about her true intentions. Within the hour, Samuel was driving the cart down the long plantation drive, the old bay mare plodding steadily forward. The letter felt like a burning coal against his chest. What was in it? And who was the real recipient, if not someone reached through the postal service? The road to town wound through cotton fields and neighboring plantations. Samuel kept his eyes downcast whenever he passed white folks, playing the role of the obedient slave on an errand. Inside, however, his mind was working furiously, weighing options and possibilities. The town of Thornfield, named after the master's family who had founded it 3 generations ago, was a small but bustling center of commerce. As Samuel drove down the main street, he noted the usual businesses: the general store, the blacksmith, the tavern where plantation owners gathered to discuss politics and cotton prices. At the far end stood the courthouse and jail, a stark reminder of the power structures that kept people like him in chains. He tethered the horse and cart outside the post office, taking care to appear unhurried despite the urgency he felt. Inside, the small office was empty, except for Mr. Patterson, a thin, balding man with spectacles perched on his nose. "Yes, boy?" Patterson looked up from his ledger, his tone dismissive. "A letter from Mistress Thornfield, sir," Samuel said, keeping his eyes appropriately lowered. "She asked me to give it to you personally." Patterson took the envelope, examining the blank exterior with a raised eyebrow. "Did she now? How unusual." "Yes, sir, she was most insistent." The postmaster studied Samuel's face for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Is there anything else?" "No, sir, thank you, sir." Samuel backed toward the door, eager to complete the rest of his plan. Once outside, he didn't immediately return to the cart. Instead, he moved casually toward the alley beside the post office, then pressed himself against the wall beneath an open window. Inside, he could hear Patterson moving around, muttering to himself. "Most irregular. No address. Ah, but I suppose that's the point." There was the sound of a drawer opening, then closing. Samuel risked a glance through the window. Patterson was no longer holding the letter. Instead, he had returned to his ledger as if nothing had happened. Samuel's suspicions deepened. The letter hadn't been meant for the postal service at all. Patterson was clearly a middleman, holding it for someone else, someone whose identity Eleanor wanted to keep secret. With no way to discover more without risking detection, Samuel reluctantly returned to the cart. He had other errands to run, both those assigned by Cook and those of his own devising. His next stop was the general store, where he collected the supplies on Cook's list: sugar, flour, coffee, and spices. As the shopkeeper's wife wrapped the items, Samuel gathered his courage. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said deferentially. "I was wondering if you might know of a Mr. Blackwood who used to do business in these parts. My master mentioned the name, and I'm trying to locate him for an important matter." The woman's hands stilled. "Blackwood? Jacob Blackwood?" Her voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. Samuel nodded, heart racing at this confirmation that the man existed. "Yes, ma'am. That sounds right." She glanced around nervously, though the store was empty. "You'd best not mention that name around here, boy. especially not if you belong to William Thornfield. Is Mr. Blackwood still in the area? Samuel pressed, keeping his tone humble. Last I heard, he had a small property up north, near the state line. She finished wrapping the packages with quick, efficient movements. But that was years ago. Now that'll be $8.43. Samuel handed over the money Eleanor had given him, his mind whirling with this new information. Blackwood was alive and possibly within reach. If the ledger contained evidence of William's crimes against him, perhaps the man could be persuaded to help expose the master's current schemes. As he loaded the supplies into the cart, Samuel noticed a commotion down the street. A crowd had gathered outside the courthouse where a man was nailing a notice to the public board. Curious, Samuel led the mare and cart closer, hanging back at the edge of the crowd. "Biggest slave auction in the county," one man was saying to another. "Thornfield's selling off nearly his entire workforce. Must be 50 or 60 prime field hands plus house servants." "Heard he's having financial troubles," his companion replied. "Mortgaged to the hilt, they say." "Strange timing, with cotton prices rising. You'd think he'd want to increase production, not sell off his labor force." Samuel froze, straining to hear more over the pounding of his heart. "Well, I heard from Jenkins at the bank that Thornfield's been moving money offshore. Might be planning to leave the country altogether." "What about his wife, that pretty Boston girl?" A knowing chuckle. "Word is, she won't be traveling with him. Convenient how these delicate northern women tend to succumb to southern fevers, isn't it?" The men moved away, their laughter fading into the general noise of the crowd. Samuel stood rooted to the spot, the confirmation of William's murderous intentions toward Eleanor sending a chill through him despite the warm day. He approached the notice board cautiously, pretending to adjust the mare's harness while stealing glances at the new posting. There it was in black and white. Auction of prime plantation slaves. Property of William Thornfield, Eskitter, to be held at Thornfield Plantation. Tuesday next, 10 o'clock. Tuesday next, 5 days away. Isaiah had been right. The sale was happening much sooner than Eleanor had believed, and the fact that it was being held at the plantation rather than the town auction block suggested William wanted to complete the transaction quickly and quietly. Samuel returned to the cart, his mind racing. He needed to get back to the plantation immediately to warn the others. But as he turned the mare toward home, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. "Well, what have we here?" drawled a familiar voice. "A slave, wandering town, all by his lonesome." Samuel turned slowly to face Mr. Haynes, the overseer's cold eyes boring into him. "Just collecting supplies for cook, sir," he said, pulling out Eleanor's pass. "I have permission." Haynes snatched the paper, scanning it with narrowed eyes. "So you do. Signed by the mistress, I see, not the master." He folded the pass and slipped it into his own pocket. "Interesting." "Please, sir, I need that to return to the plantation," Samuel said, fighting to keep the desperation from his voice. "Do you now?" Haynes smiled unpleasantly. "And what else have you been doing in town besides collecting supplies? Asking questions about Jacob Blackwood, perhaps?" Samuel's blood ran cold. How did Haynes know that? "Mrs. Miller at the general store is a good Christian woman," Haynes continued, answering the unspoken question. "She knows her duty when it comes to slaves poking, their noses where they don't belong." "I was only following my master's instructions," Samuel lied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Were you now? We'll just see about that." Haynes grabbed Samuel's arm, his fingers digging painfully into the flesh. "I think you and I need to have a little talk with the sheriff before you head back." Samuel's mind raced. Being detained by the sheriff would ruin everything. By the time he was released, if he was released, it might be too late to warn the others about the auction. And if Haynes searched him and found the mysterious letter Eleanor had hidden in his shirt— "Actually, Mr. Haynes," came a new voice, cultured and authoritative, "I believe you'll find that pass is perfectly valid. Both Samuel and Haynes turned to see a tall, distinguished gentleman in an expensive suit standing nearby. His silver hair and beard were immaculately groomed, and he carried a walking stick with a gold handle. "This isn't your concern, Mr. Blackwood," Haynes said, his voice suddenly less certain. Samuel stared in shock. "Blackwood? Jacob Blackwood? Here in town?" "On the contrary," Blackwood replied smoothly. "Any mistreatment of citizens in our town square is very much my concern, as a member of the town council." He extended his hand toward Haynes. "The pass, if you please." Haynes hesitated, then reluctantly produced Eleanor's note, which Blackwood examined before handing back to Samuel. "Everything appears to be in order," Blackwood declared. "The boy is on legitimate business for his mistress, unless you have evidence of some crime." "No evidence yet," Haynes muttered. "But I'm watching you, boy," he added to Samuel. "Don't think this is over." With a final glare, he stalked away toward the tavern. Samuel turned to thank his unexpected savior, but Blackwood was already walking away. On impulse, Samuel called after him, "Mr. Blackwood, sir?" The man paused, looking back with a raised eyebrow. "Thank you, sir," Samuel said, bowing his head respectfully. Then, taking a tremendous risk, he added in a lower voice, "I believe we have a mutual enemy in Master William." Blackwood's expression didn't change, but he stepped closer, out of earshot of passers-by. "Explain yourself, boy, quickly." "Mistress Eleanor has found evidence of the master's crimes against you and others," Samuel whispered. "A hidden ledger. She seeks justice, and so do I, for different reasons." "Eleanor?" Blackwood's composure slipped momentarily, revealing surprise. "She sent you. Not to find you specifically, sir, but I believe you may be the key to stopping what's coming." "And what is coming?" Blackwood's voice was barely audible. "Master William plans to sell all his slaves next Tuesday and flee the country with the profits. And—" Samuel hesitated, then plunged ahead. "And I believe he intends to murder Mistress Eleanor before he goes." Blackwood's face hardened. "These are serious accusations." "Yes, sir, with serious evidence to support them." The older man studied Samuel intently, seeming to measure his worth. "You're taking an enormous risk telling me this." "We're all at risk, sir, some more than others." After a long moment, Blackwood nodded. "The postmaster gave me a letter just before our encounter. I presume it's from Eleanor." "Yes, sir." "Very well. Tell your mistress I received her message, and tell her—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Tell her that old debts will be settled soon." With that, he tipped his hat slightly and walked away, his cane tapping rhythmically on the cobblestones. Samuel stood watching him go, wondering if he had just found an ally or created a new complication. Either way, there was no time to waste. He climbed onto the cart and urged the old mare to a faster pace than her usual plod, eager to return to the plantation before his absence was noted. As the cart rattled down the dusty road, Samuel's mind worked furiously. The pieces were falling into place. William's plan to sell the slaves and flee, Eleanor's secret correspondence with Blackwood, the hidden ledger that might contain evidence of William's crimes. But crucial questions remained. What exactly was in that ledger? What was Eleanor's true relationship with Blackwood? And most importantly, could any of this information be leveraged to save his family and the others from being sold? The plantation came into view as the afternoon sun began its descent toward the horizon. Samuel's time was running out. Tonight, he would need to see that ledger for himself, discover what secrets it held, and make his final decision. Trust in Eleanor and Blackwood's intervention, or flee with Isaiah and the others when the Underground Railroad conductor arrived tomorrow night. As he guided the cart up the long drive, Samuel noticed unusual activity around the main house. Extra horses were tethered outside, and unfamiliar voices drifted from the open windows. Visitors, unexpected ones, judging by the flurry of movement among the house slaves. Samuel delivered the supplies to Cook, who clucked disapprovingly at his lateness. "Master's got important guests," she informed him in a hushed voice. "Buyers from Georgia come early to inspect the merchandise, if you take my meaning." The slave buyers. Here already, days before the auction. Samuel's stomach knotted with dread. "Where's Mistress Eleanor?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Cook shrugged. "Took to her bed with a headache when they arrived. Master wasn't pleased." She handed him a tray with coffee and cake. "Take this to the study. And mind you're invisible, boy. These men don't like slaves who look them in the eye." Samuel balanced the tray carefully as he made his way to the study. The door was ajar, and he could hear William's voice, unusually animated and jovial. "Finest workers in the county, gentlemen. Strong, healthy, and well-disciplined. You won't find better stock anywhere in the state." "And you're certain there won't be any legal complications?" asked a deep voice with a Georgia accent. "No unexpected claims against the property?" "None whatsoever," William assured him. "I have clear title to every slave on this plantation. By this time next week, they'll be yours to transport south." Samuel knocked softly on the doorframe. "Ah, refreshments," William called. "Come in, boy." Samuel entered with downcast eyes, setting the tray on the side table as instructed. 3 men sat with William, prosperous-looking planters with hard eyes that assessed Samuel as they would a horse at auction. "Turn around, boy," ordered one of them, a corpulent man with a florid face. "Let me see your build." Samuel complied silently, rage burning in his chest as the man examined him. "Fine specimen," the Georgian commented to William. "Strong shoulders, good teeth from what I can see. How old?" 22, William replied. "Born on the plantation. Trained as a house servant, but he'd adapt well to field work." "I might take this one separately," the man mused. "My wife's been wanting a new manservant. Handsome face. She likes that in her house slaves." William laughed. "We can certainly discuss a private sale, Mr. Beaumont, but he'd come at a premium. Well-trained house slaves don't grow on trees." Samuel kept his expression blank as they discussed his fate as casually as they might debate the price of a chair. When dismissed, he backed out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. In the hallway, he stood for a moment, trembling with suppressed emotion. There was no more time for hesitation or half-measures. Tonight, he would get that ledger, no matter the risk. And tomorrow, he would make his final choice. A desperate gamble on Eleanor and Blackwood's intervention, or flight toward an uncertain freedom. Either way, he would not be sold like cattle to work in Georgia. Death would be preferable to that fate. As Samuel turned to go, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The hidden panel beside the fireplace in the study was slightly ajar. Someone had accessed the secret compartment recently, and in their haste had failed to close it properly. The ledger, was it still there? Or had William discovered it was compromised? There was only one way to find out, and Samuel knew he couldn't wait until nightfall to do so. Samuel moved through the mansion with practiced stealth. With William entertaining the Georgia buyers in the study for hours, he needed another way to access the ledger. He slipped into the master bedroom and discovered a hidden passage behind the wardrobe connecting to the study. Through a gap in the panel, he could see William and 3 buyers discussing business. "The auction is merely a formality, gentlemen," William was saying. "With the right incentive, I'm prepared to make a private arrangement for the entire lot." "And your wife?" asked one man. "My wife's sensibilities need not concern us. By the time the transaction is complete, she will no longer be in a position to object." When the men turned away to examine documents, Samuel seized his chance. He slipped into the study, retrieved the ledger from the hidden compartment, and noticed a folded document beneath it. On impulse, he grabbed that too before retreating through the passage. In the abandoned smokehouse, Samuel examined his findings. The ledger documented years of William's fraud, embezzlement from the plantation, business partners, and Eleanor's family trust. It detailed how William had framed Blackwood, his former partner, and planned to sell all his slaves before fleeing to Europe. The document was a letter from Eleanor to "My dearest Jay," revealing she and Blackwood were lovers plotting against William. They wanted the ledger to prove Blackwood's innocence and secure Eleanor's divorce and financial settlement. Samuel realized Isaiah had been right. He was merely a pawn in their game. Would Eleanor truly help the slaves when she had what she wanted? Hearing people calling his name, Samuel hid the documents and left the smokehouse. Abigail informed him that Eleanor wanted to see him urgently, and that Haynes was asking questions about his trip to town. Eleanor asked about the letter delivery. Samuel told her about meeting Blackwood, who said, "Old debts will be settled soon." He also shared that the auction was publicly posted, and the Georgia buyers were already inspecting slaves. "We're running out of time," Eleanor said. "I need that ledger tonight." Before Samuel could decide whether to reveal he already had it, William entered and took him for inspection by the buyers. Samuel endured their degrading examination while overhearing William sell him and his mother to Beaumont for $1,800, with papers to be signed that evening. Samuel hurried to his mother and explained everything. Esther suggested using the ledger as leverage rather than attempting escape, knowing her poor health would slow them down. "If William Thornfield's crimes are documented in his own hand, that book is worth more than gold to the right people," she said. A desperate plan forming, Samuel set out to find Isaiah and retrieve the ledger. By morning, he would either be on his way to freedom or facing terrible consequences.